Welcome. Good afternoon. It is my honor to welcome you to the October Interdisciplinary Education Grand Rounds. I'm Margaret Robinson, the Associate Director for the Office of Interdisciplinary Programs. The Office of Interdisciplinary Programs is housed in the Office of the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs and Faculty Development. Our office is charged with the development, implementation, operation, and evaluation of campus-wide interdisciplinary and interprofessional education requirements. Today, we'll refer to this as IPE, the acronym for interprofessional education. We'll begin shortly, but first, a few housekeeping items. Today's presentation is being recorded. Please remember to mute your microphones and use the chat function to ask any questions. We will also have time at the end for Q&A. Sarah Cable will be our Zoom facilitator today. You may message her or myself directly with any technical issues. Without any further ado, we will begin today's activity titled, A Guide to the Vaccine Hesitancy Toolkit. Today's event will be moderated by our Interdisciplinary Student Council co-chairs, Dominique Gropp and Jeremiah McGuire. Welcome.
Thank you, Margaret, for that wonderful introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the October Grand Rounds. I am Dominique Gropp. I'm a fourth-year pharmacy student, and I am the current ISC chair this academic year. Jeremiah and I will be the moderators for today's event, and the purpose of today's Grand Rounds is to review a current topic that affects the campus community and to provide skills, resources, or education related to that topic. Today's objectives include establishing the role of frontline workers in vaccine outreach and where hesitancy issues are involved, exemplifying the need for frontline workers to be prepared to have difficult conversations about hesitancy, discuss the techniques for having difficult conversations, and introduce the Vaccine Hesitancy Toolkit as a means for frontline workers to facilitate difficult conversations about vaccine hesitancy. First, a few ground rules. We ask that you please be respectful and professional. Use the chat as much as needed. Do not divulge personal or HIPAA information. Those who become disruptive will be muted or removed by the Zoom facilitator. And in case of technical issues, we will restart the Zoom call up until 12:55 if we get disconnected. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah to begin today's session.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremiah McGuire. I'm a second-year CPMA and dietetics student at the College of Allied Health, and I'm also serving as the vice chair on the Interdisciplinary Student Council for this academic year. And I want to thank you all for being here today and everyone who has worked together to collaborate on this interdisciplinary Grand Rounds. So we will begin today's activity with a short panel discussion from a few of our campus leaders who have worked on the front lines for the COVID vaccine. We are mindful that we've had hundreds, if not thousands, of students, faculty, staff, and clinicians from across campus contribute to the vaccine response. This has ranged from inpatient vaccinations, employee and student health efforts, and of course, our massive community events. The OU campus community has contributed thousands of hours to the planning and delivery of vaccines to well over 50,000 of our colleagues and neighbors. We want to pause and say thank you for your time and effort. Your work has been truly remarkable. We have invited speakers from our college across campus. The College of Pharmacy has taken leadership in on-campus vaccines and our early community pods. The College of Nursing has been on the front lines from early testing, as well as on-campus and community vaccines. The College of Medicine mobilized hundreds of students to train them on vaccine administration. The College of Dentistry was able to get approval for their students to be trained on intermuscular injections. Across all of this has been the Unity Clinic that has assisted in the community-based vaccine efforts to support the work of others where additional volunteers were needed. This included volunteers from all colleges, College of Public Health, pivotal in organizing administration. Excuse me, I lost my place for a moment. These campus-wide teams were recently recognized with the 2021 George E. Fibble MD Award at the Nexus Summit Conference. The student poster recognized the work of these teams at OU and in the community, We would like to congratulate the authors of the poster, Addison Davis, Brandon Moritz, Krista Bellick, Jared Anderson, Tate Atkinson, and Tram Lee, as well as the hundreds of team members that contributed to the impressive body of work. I'm going to turn it back over to Dominique to begin to introduce our panelists.
Thanks, Jeremiah. I'm now going to introduce each of our panelists and ask that they spend just a few minutes to introduce themselves, their role, and to explain their efforts and experiences on the front lines for COVID vaccines and also addressing vaccine hesitancy. So first up is Dr. Susan Conway from the College of Pharmacy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. So I have been involved, as was mentioned, leading our COVID vaccine clinics on campus. So I've been there since day one that we had it in the state, even to yesterday when we were giving boosters. So we've given vaccine at about 60 clinics so far, a lot of healthcare workers on campus. I would say from my observation there, just continue to be impressed by the turnout of our leaders, of healthcare workers from across the spectrum of all professions, how eager they are every time they're called up for their chance to get a shot. So how eager everybody was and proud of displaying that and taking pictures and live streams and different things when they're coming to get their vaccine. And then as boosters have become available for Pfizer, Moderna, we have been able to implement those within our flu clinics within less than 24 hours, and just seeing the number again of our leaders and healthcare workers there day one, accepting the science, accepting the evidence, being the true advocate and doing for themselves what they believe their patient should do. And just thinking about hesitancy and barriers from the patient perspective, I practice in a primary care clinic and find myself in a lot of those conversations. Just had an 82-year-old gentleman this last hour that I was visiting with, and he is scheduled for his booster next week, and was talking about how he's tried to reach out to family members that haven't gotten their vaccine. And he said that he told his niece, don't listen to what anybody tells you but what your doctor says. And it's like, there's some truth to that. And that's a good grandfatherly advice to give to his granddaughter. But just made me think there's just been so much misinformation that even those that feel like they are in tune to the education and know where to look. I've even seen it with some of our pharmacy students, like you don't know what to trust. And so having the facts, having that trusted conversation, I think as healthcare providers, we can't just be worn down by it and just avoid the conversation thinking, well, either they've accepted and gotten the vaccine or they're totally against it and it's not even worth me bringing it up. In the last month, I've had most of my family members reach out to me to ask my opinion about if they're eligible for the booster and if they qualify and which one they should get. And so that just shows, just as a whole, the public is aware that some of the messages in the media aren't the most accurate ones. And so they are seeking information from somebody that they know is in the know and educated about it. So it's our role as healthcare workers to really provide that solid foundation of education to those people that we have the relationships with, either professionally or personally. And then finally, my other point is just about access. We've got to reduce barriers. And so it needs to be in every office. It needs to be in every pharmacy. When you have those conversations with those patients, they're just like that gentleman. Yeah, I plan to get my booster next week. It's like, okay, what's your plan? Do you have an appointment? Are you going through your wife? Because I've got it here in my clinic. I can give it to you today. And he had a plan. He had an appointment, wanted to go with his family. But once you talk to them and they're like, yeah, I should get that. I need to get that. Well, let's stick your arm right now. Let me not send you off to go make an appointment, find a place, get that done next week, next month. We know how we all put things off. So if they're on the fence, they haven't executed, made that decision to get it, and the several other opportunities they've had to make that easy, reduce those barriers. So I would just encourage as healthcare workers, we not get fatigued about bringing up the conversation, talking to them, providing solid education, addressing misinformation, and then where is in our power to make sure we know those places to send them to if our own place doesn't have vaccine, to say, okay, you want to get it, great, give me your arm, let me take care of you now, or let me have a place I can send you to that can take care of you kind of on the spot. All right, I think I was right at 4 minutes, so I'll cut it off there, but happy to answer questions later as needed.
Thank you, Dr. Conway. The part about you mentioning answering your family members' questions about eligibility, I definitely resonated with that. Just my family's always texting me about, are they eligible for a booster? So thank you for talking about that. Our next speaker is Dr. Melissa Kraft from the College of Nursing.
Hi, thank you so much. And just like everyone has said, it is my honor to be on here with many of the people that I've worked with over the last year and been invited to give vaccines with and be a part of addressing this pandemic issue. So I am an associate dean at the College of Nursing. I'm the associate dean for clinical affairs, outreach, and practice innovation. And so practice is near and dear to my heart. And so for me, a day of giving vaccines is fun. It is a wonderful thing. Anytime we have a chance, just like Dr. Conway said, to put that shot in somebody's arm and make a difference, not only in their life, but their family's life, is an incredible day. So, and a shout out to Dr. Aaron Wendelboe. My current efforts that I've had the chance to be a part of is with a grant that he has on the CDC Foundation grant. And this is really taking vaccines from the megapods to the, if we get 19, we're happy. So it is with our community partners. So my comments are going to kind of focus on what I've observed with that. One of the ones that I've been to several times is the Latino Community Development Agency. And that really has given me some insight into the change process. And I'm going to bring us to maybe a theory. We are on an academic setting. If we look at vaccine hesitancy in the relationship to a change, because it is a change, it's a change in a decision, it's a change in an action that somebody makes. And if we kind of structure it on that way, a really great change theory is something called switch. And this says that the brain has two inhabitants: the elephant, which controls sort of your impulse and your drive and your feelings and decisions that you make that are not necessarily cognitive, and the rider, which controls logic and thinking and thought. And these two sometimes are at war with each other. What I have seen in vaccine hesitancy is that a lot of the messaging, and I understand this, but a lot of the messaging we do is appealing to the rider, who's on top of that elephant, who's kind of going wherever it wants. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the decisions, and what Dr. Conway just talked about, a lot of times it's not what you know, it's who you know and how you feel about that person. And so really then the other part of this change theory is shaping the path, providing a way forward. And so I think that's one of the things that we all do, and what I'm hearing us say today is the message, although logic and facts are important, recognizing that the decision I have seen is going to be based on, just like Dr. Conway said, who you know, the trust. So again, back to the LCDA, the Latino Community Development Association, what I observed happening there is that people were coming to a place that they trusted, generally with someone they trusted. And there was a translator there, because I do not speak Spanish, but there was somebody. So again, they had trust in even the language. But what I saw that really kind of resonated with me is kids, adolescents, when it became available for them, coming in with their moms, and the mom not having been vaccinated through that relationship. So they've come to a place they trust, they're hearing things in a language that they trust, they have someone with them who they love and they trust. That person has opted into a decision that then flips them into getting the vaccine. I saw this play out several times. And so my message, I guess, for us today is to continue to do what we've been doing, just like Dr. Conway said, thinking about how we tailor the message for the person, but as much as possible, try to see one, bring one. You know, if we can encourage everyone to bring a friend with them, even if they're on the fence, if they have the chance to see it, develop that trust in the person in the place, then maybe we can get more vaccine in more arms. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kraft. That was very insightful. Our next speaker is Professor Kim Graziano from the College of Dentistry.
Hello, I'm going to follow with Dr. Kraft and Dr. Conway. I'm honored and privileged to be here and asked to speak. The College of Dentistry is way a little more unique in its role with the vaccines, and we don't provide vaccines in the clinic typically, but we have two different programs within the College of Dentistry. We have an undergraduate, pre-doctoral, and then a pre-doctoral program. Our undergraduate program is for dental hygienists. And by state law, dental hygienists are not allowed to provide IM injections, which is unfortunate. And then the dentistry program, they are. So one of the things that we had to do in order to help our students be able to be part of this absolutely amazing event was to reach out to the Board of Dentistry to see if we could be able to provide students the opportunity to learn and to grow and to work with these other healthcare entities. So we reached out to the Board of Dentistry, and they gave us a blessing to participate with the vaccine clinic. So Lee Tram Tram Lee and Dr. Bratzler were amazing and came over and provided our dental hygiene and our dental students the opportunity to learn how to give IM injections. So, and then one of our other issues, we had more barriers, I think, than most of you all had trying to get to be able to participate in the vaccine and continue to have challenges. But one of the things that we did do is we did provide the opportunity for our students to receive credit, clinical credit for going in and giving vaccines or just volunteering in general in the clinic. So I was very proud of our dental hygiene students because they were the ones that actually were so excited, and they came out in force. And our Emma Brito, which was our lead at the Unity Clinic, was the first dental student from the College of Dentistry to provide a COVID vaccine on the OU Norman campus. So she ventured there, and she had her picture made with President Harris. And so of course we got that picture. She sent it to me. She was so excited and proud all at the same time. So some of the things that we're trying to do now is because we had the opportunity during the state of emergency to give vaccines, the dental hygiene students and the dental students, is now we're going to go to our Board of Dentistry and change laws. We are trying to change the culture of dentistry to become more part of the healthcare component. It seems like we have been extremely siloed over the years. And so we are reaching out to the Board of Dentistry to change the law where hygienists can be able to provide vaccines in the future. So when you go to your dentist and they have that conversation with you about not being vaccinated or not, we can actually have that on site in our clinics and be able to provide that to our patients. Like I said, we're just battling the limits that our governance has put on us, but it has been just extremely exciting. I've been very blessed to work with each one of you all, and so it's just been I don't know what else I can say except for the challenges are greater than what we had hoped, and so we are hoping to break those barriers down. We do have conversations with our patients. It's just unfortunate we can't provide the vaccine. Like, it'd be great to be able to do that. Like, oh, why are you not having a vaccine, and having that conversation like Dr. Kraft explained, and just, it's really, really beneficial for us to begin to start working together. We're also, once we get the blessing from the Board of Dentistry, we will need to change our curriculum, and then we will reach out to the College of Nursing to help with that training for our students. And so then we'll interact even more. So, it's just, I think, unfortunately, a pandemic has opened the eyes of some people that normally had been a little closed. And something good always comes from something bad. And I believe this is one of those things that that has, for us, for our particular profession, has been able to do that. So that's about all as far as our students were not as accessible, and our faculty are not as accessible to come and help with the vaccine clinic. I was there. I would go in and I brought drinks. But it was one of those things that we're just understaffed like most everybody else. And our curriculum just is so 8 to 5, 5 days a week clinic class like everybody else. It's just that we move in pods. It became very difficult, but that's why we reached out to the dean and asked him for our students to have credit, and they seemed to turn out. So we were really proud of them. But other than that, that's about all the College of Dentistry was able to do, unfortunately.
Well, thank you, Professor Graziano. That I didn't know the history of how dentistry got involved, so thank you for providing that. Our next speaker is Addison Davis from the College of Public Health, and she is a second-year MHA student.
Yes, thank you, Dominique. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. Thanks for letting us come on and talk to you guys, especially from the student perspective. This is so exciting that we're all gathering to talk about our experiences now. I feel like we're still going full speed, but maybe have had just a few moments to catch our breath. I know I was very involved at the beginning of the vaccine efforts, and as it's transitioned to the community side of it. We've transitioned that over to Krista Bellick, of course, and within the Unity Clinic. So I'm going to start off with just a little bit of background about me and who I am in my discipline, and then I'll go into how I was involved in the efforts and what our public health students were able to contribute. And somebody please keep me on time because I tend to ramble and talk a lot. So I'll just preface that. So obviously Addison Davis, MHA by training, but I do have some clinical background. I originally began as an MPH student at the College of Public Health, and then it was actually the vaccine clinics that transitioned my idea to, oh wow, I really like hospital administrations and coordinating things. This is fun. So we got involved with the vaccine effort, and I guess it was early January. I had a one-off request from a colleague of mine, now a first-year resident at Arizona Tucson, Daniel Gibarelli, you guys may be familiar with, but he reached out to me kind of just as a one-off request and said, hey, I think there is an opportunity here for us. And I think this was January 6th, and our first vaccine clinic, there was some, having to coordinate things, and we ended up having about 24 hours, I think, as somebody previously mentioned, to turn over this vaccine event. So Daniel, Tram, Lee, and I all kind of forced together and got up the training, made sure that we had faculty oversight for the training so we could have vaccinators at the vaccine event. That would be great. And then we got to going on things. We coordinated the students, and then I shifted roles, and it was just everybody get it going, and then we'll kind of delineate out, into administrative and clinical responsibilities. So at the vaccine clinics, my job as a volunteer coordinator was to really oversee the vaccine clinic as a whole. So our clinical personnel were handling the vaccine side of it, making sure our patients were safe and taken care of. But my job was to make sure that there weren't bottlenecks. Everybody had the resources that they need to be successful. Our patients were safe while they were standing in line, because God forbid somebody get COVID at a COVID vaccine event. Can you imagine the debacle? So we went on, and my job was really just, some people have, Dr. Dennis brought this up the other day. He was like, you really do air traffic control. And that's kind of what I would equate it to, is what we did here. So getting students signed in, making sure they knew where they needed to go, just in time training, And then I would just process improve throughout the rest of the time. So asking people if they needed anything, if, I saw a bottleneck, trying to prevent it before it even happened. Because the main thing was we were able to vaccinate so many people in such a quick amount of time due to the process and the system that supported our personnel. And that was my main focus throughout this time. Wanted to make sure that our patients were following through easily. They didn't have any bottlenecks with their paperwork, that they were going through line in an easy and coordinated fashion. They knew where to go next. They had a familiar face to greet them if they didn't. So that was kind of my duty on the ground. Now I want to take a step back and talk about this as a public health student and the opportunity that this is proposed for me. I never thought that when I went into public health, I thought that I would do it in a gap year and I would just get my master's degree and go on to healthcare. But that's not really what happened. Everybody in public health, and I speak very generally, so if anybody has a different opinion, that's totally okay. But we speak in the importance of population health and the impact that population health has in our community all the time in healthcare, but we never see it put into action. We never see how a certain group of people being vaccinated could impact the whole community, and that's something that I thought was really important. We were able to showcase to students all across campus through this opportunity that the awful pandemic showed to us, was the importance of population health. And without that, I think that a lot of times people say, oh, well, it's preventative, it's things, of the sorts, but this is really the importance of the population and the community as a whole. And it takes every single person in there to do that. And when we talk about vaccine hesitancy, I think that's something that we tend to people have a different perspective when it's not exposed to them already, is that, oh, well, it's me and but we always want to think about our other community members that we could be affecting as well. It's not just an inner look, it's an outer look as well. And Dominique's unmuting, so I think I may be out of time. So thank you guys for letting me talk on here and ramble a little bit. I appreciate you all.
Thank you, Addison. Our next speaker is Krista Bellick from the College of Medicine, and she is a second-year med student.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. It's such an honor to be here, and Dominique and Jeremiah have done a great job of putting this event together, so thank you. And I do want to boast a little bit on Addie and Tram and Daniel. The megapods that she's speaking of, that they ran back in the beginning of this year, if we kind of take a look back into what the vaccination efforts were like in the beginning of the year, the efficiency rates that we reached were up to 204 vaccinations an hour, which is just completely incredible. But I think, as we all are aware, those megapod events were extremely successful, but at some point we began to see vaccine hesitancy, and the appointments began to dwindle, and we weren't able to fill those appointments up anymore. And so at that point in time, that's kind of whenever I joined the team, we decided to start doing community vaccine events. And so our goal with this is to, instead of having mass megapods, which would be more than 2,000 vaccines at one event, that were very efficient, we wanted to make our events more accessible. And so we partnered with community leaders in the area, trying to identify leaders of churches, leaders of social organizations that were very trusted in the community. And there were also advocates and champions of the vaccine efforts. And we were able to have over 13 distinct locations over 3.5 months over the summer. We started in May and vaccinated over 400 community members throughout the summer. And so, like I said, while we were transitioning our efforts from the large scale operations to mobile operations, we had to really adjust our clinic workflows to be, instead of the most efficient, trying to make them accessible, and making adjustments such as having walk-in appointments, paper-only registration, due to different internet accessibility, trying to be flexible to the physical spaces that we were allowed. We were setting up clinics in office rooms. We had vaccines available next to the coffee and donuts after church services. We had pop-up vaccine clinics in the break room at food resource centers. So when people are picking up their food for the month, they were also able to get a vaccine. So we had to be very flexible. But what was valuable about this, and I think it speaks about what Dr. Kraft was talking about, what she's experienced at LCDA, is that these were spaces that people were already familiar with, and it was very convenient to get a vaccine. And I think when we think about vaccine hesitancy, we think about people with large misconceptions about the vaccine. They're completely hesitant. They don't want to get it because of their beliefs of whatever the vaccine is. But I think a lot of the times people just aren't sure. They're not sure, and it's not very convenient for them to get it. They are, maybe a single mom. They have jobs and kids, and they don't have time to go make an appointment and think about these things. It's not on the front of their mind. And so whenever we were just there in a place where they already were bringing the vaccine to them, they were able to sit down and think like, this is actually, I feel comfortable here and I can have my questions answered directly, and it's convenient. I can get it in 20 minutes. And that worked really well for us. We were able to have some really great conversations with people about why they decided to get vaccinated, what they were hesitant about. And it was amazing if you could just sit down and have a 5-10 minute conversation with someone, tell them what your experience was and be patient. We were really able to reach a lot of people that way. And the power of the relationships that they had, like Dr. Kraft was speaking on, if their friends or family were getting vaccinated and they could talk with them, and instead of us, we could just give them the information, but they could really make that decision with people they love and trust. That's where we really reach combating vaccine hesitancy in a powerful way. We can do only so much. So I could see Dominique is also unmuting. I could talk about this for a long time, but this is a really great experience. We had an interprofessional practice-based experience that really empowered us as students to make a difference in community health. And I'm really excited to see what work we do moving forward with other health screenings as well. So thank you guys for having me. Again, sorry I could talk.
Oh, thank you so much, Krista. I just want to thank you, all of our panelists, for taking time out of your busy schedules and talking with us today. We all really appreciate it, and it was very insightful. It is now my honor to introduce you to Dr. Shane Connolly to discuss tips related to difficult conversations.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I am a professor of psychology here on the Norman campus at OU, and I've also been an associate director at the Center for Applied Social Research since about 2005. I just became the new director of the Institute for Society and Community Transformation, also here on the Norman campus, and I got involved in vaccine misinformation and vaccine hesitancy about 1.5 years ago, and was introduced to Dr. Erin Wendelboe, who's an epidemiologist here, and I just found the topic to be fascinating, and also just being a psychologist. I'm an organizational psychologist, but there's a lot of research and study out there about sort of how people approach difficult conversations and their attitudes. So I just wanted to talk a little bit today about having difficult conversations about COVID. And so I'm gonna share my screen and start this presentation. Okay, is everyone seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So just to sort of kick us off here, why is it difficult to discuss the COVID-19 vaccines? These are new vaccines, and I think it's important to recognize that it's very normal for people to have questions. If you don't have any medical background, or if you don't know a lot about vaccines, it's pretty normal to want to know, how are these made? What is in these vaccines? Like, how are these vaccines different than other vaccines that I've received? There is a lot of information about these new vaccines, and I think to some extent that can be overwhelming for people who just maybe want some information, but they don't want the 10-page fact sheet about the COVID vaccines. And so, there's sort of this balance between giving information or providing information and helping to understand what people want to know about the vaccines. Another reason these difficult conversations occur is there's a lot of misinformation or incorrect information circulating about COVID-19 vaccines. Some of this is just driven by people's lack of knowledge. It's not intentional. People aren't trying to, provide misinformation on purpose, although that is going on in some corners of social media and on some platforms by people who are intending to provide misinformation. But a lot of times it's very incidental. It can just be somebody who's a little bit misinformed or who doesn't know. And so that's another reason sometimes it's difficult to, because once people hear misinformation or hear something that's incorrect, it tends to be hard to correct that kind of information. And so you really have to do a lot of work to get people away from the misinformation. The other thing that has happened is that COVID-19 conversations in general have become politicized. And so we have had sort of this weird dynamic, at least here in the US and maybe elsewhere, but where, some of the conversations surrounding masking or vaccines or whatever have just become more politicized. And so therefore, sometimes it seems like, well, maybe I shouldn't talk about COVID-19 at all because I just don't want to start a conflict, especially with my friends or family. I don't want to, it just seems easier than having the difficult conversation. So I just kind of wanted to go through some advice that is research backed that is out there for how to have these difficult conversations. These come from doctors who are having conversations or who have done research on, people having conversations about newborn vaccines, flu vaccines, vaccines later in life. So this covers a wide range of types of vaccines, but these apply to the COVID-19 vaccines as well. I think first it's important to recognize that vaccine hesitancy has a variety of different causes. It's not that people are just trying to be difficult or that they just are trying to purposefully, not do this. They may not understand what is involved in the vaccines or what, they may want more information about the vaccines. They may feel maybe isolated or somehow not connected well enough into a healthcare system or a healthcare provider. And so there's just a variety of reasons that are out there, and some of it might just have to do with access, as was already mentioned by a couple of panelists. The second thing is that people really want to feel like their concerns are being heard. People don't want somebody coming at them and just saying, "Oh, just get vaccinated." That's just, maybe they've been hearing that again and again and again, and they just might want their opinion to be heard before they dive in. And so in trying to understand another person's perspective, it's really important to kind of come at this with open-ended questions and find out what people's concerns are. Ask if they have any specific concerns. You guys probably have all of the answers or most of the answers, or you'll know where to go or where to send a person to get those answers if you don't know. Along with trying to understand another person's perspective, I guess part of that is just having empathy and let the other person know you understand that they might be anxious or afraid or uncertain or have, negative feelings about vaccines for a variety of reasons. And so just saying, I understand that it can be, it can be difficult to talk about this, or it can be difficult to think about doing this. Another part of empathy, though, is also letting them know that you're understanding how they're thinking about this. It's not just how they're feeling, but how they're thinking about this. And so really try to relay back what they're telling you so that they know that you're understanding how they're thinking about the COVID vaccines. Try to avoid being judgmental. It's super easy to be judgmental. I mean, we all do it probably more than we would want to admit, but when you say, things like, oh, you should have gotten this a while ago, or, why are you hesitating, or just sort of being judgmental, just can cause people to maybe pull back even further or dig their heels in more or have more resistance to getting a vaccine. Providing accurate information is also absolutely essential, and go slowly. Not everybody is going to have the same level of readiness maybe. For some, it might be they have a few questions, and once those questions are answered, they're like, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay, I'm ready. And for others, it may be, I really need to think about this a little bit more, but I will, and thanks for the information. So I would say also be ready to have multiple conversations. I think healthcare providers have probably seen that again and again with their own patients. And so that's just something to bear in mind. So some more helpful hints, telling friends and family where they can get accurate information on their own. Some people want to do their own research. They want to go and, I think they might be wanting to go to social media or go to places where they won't get accurate information, but really say, hey, it's worth a conversation with your doctor. It's worth, going to the CDC website or, the local, there are lots of local providers who can provide you with accurate information about the vaccines. And so that is just something, let them know where to go. Offer to help them find information, to do the research with them, to show them side by side. That might be more appropriate for your close family members or close friends, but just show them where to go and where you went. Help them to be motivated to get vaccinated. Sometimes people just need a reason, and different people are going to embrace different reasons for getting vaccinated. So some of my research has looked at, why people were intending to get the vaccine, why people were not intending to get the vaccine. And, a lot of different things came up. Sometimes it was like, I want to do it because I want to stay healthy. I don't want to get COVID-19. Some people said, I want to be able to safely spend time with my family, whether that's nieces or nephews or grandchildren. Some people were very, sometimes people had multiple reasons. And if they said, I want to protect my own health, but I also want to protect other people's health. I want to do this because I know that if I get vaccinated, that will help to prevent me from spreading it to other people. And then others, showed a motivation to slow the pandemic or to stop the pandemic. That could be, slowing the emergence of new variants if that happens, or, stop preventing new variants from happening. And also, some people just want to do the things that they used to do on a more normal basis, like travel or go on vacation or just be out and about in, and this is, we're in Oklahoma here, and I think largely a lot of things have opened up, but I think there are still a lot of people who don't feel like things are back to normal yet. So that can be a motivation still for them. There are different ways to approach the conversations, and this is, I know that we're going to be going through a specific toolkit about maybe how to do these COVID-19 conversations, but from kind of a more person-based perspective, just establishing that trust and having compassion throughout these conversations. This can happen sometimes automatically if you're a family member, but trust can also be broken if you're a family member and you rush through or try to not hear the other person's perspective. And so I think it's really important to gain that trust, to have that trust, and to try to maintain that throughout these conversations. Do more listening maybe early in these conversations than talking. Hear what the other person is saying and where they're coming from, understand what their concerns are, and then maybe introduce new information to them that they may not have heard or know about. Ask about their concerns, ask about, what their worries are, but alternatively, ask about what they think are the upsides or the potential upsides of getting the vaccine. Because the more a person can sort of come up with a reason on their own and think about the positives on their own, the more they're going to say, oh, well, you know, that sort of helps to convince them, right? It's then what their actions will be cognitively consistent with what they're thinking. So there's a balance between seeking the other person's perspective, but also providing your own perspective of, you know, you being in support of the vaccines, you know, you sharing your own personal experience with the vaccine, maybe, or things like this. I think there's a balance to be struck there of don't just listen, but also provide your perspective. Because if it's a person who is a close friend or a family member, and they do trust you, and your opinion is going to matter to them, and your thoughts and views about the vaccines are going to matter. Sometimes this will be more effective if it's a one-on-one conversation, and other times it might be more effective if it's a group-based conversation. You know, families and friends work, you know, in all different sorts of ways, and sometimes a little bit of peer pressure is good in that group setting, or sometimes a person really just wants kind of that undivided attention to talk about something. And offering like data and facts and information is absolutely important. But another way that I think helps people to think about and process conversations about COVID-19 vaccines is to just hear stories. And this has been an effective way for some hesitant people to really kind of wrap their brains around why or how, or just, you know, think about motivations for why others have gotten vaccinated. And I just want to share one story with you about someone who, Native American man who works in my office, and he would come by every day and just kind of say hi. And he asked me, because he saw what I was working on one day, and he asked me about the vaccines. And he would sort of come in and say, oh, I really need to get a vaccine, you know. And he was an older individual, and so I thought, well, gosh, yeah, you really. And I would reinforce. I would say, yeah. I said, you know, and I kind of went through some of the steps that I've just described to you, and I probably talked with him, and, you know, so he has a spouse at home who also was not vaccinated. And, you know, he would come and talk to me about the grandkids who were coming over, and, you know, and I thought, okay, you know, and I did a lot of listening, and this person, you know, probably we had 8 or 9 conversations. Just, you know, I would ask him, I'd say, so have you gotten your vaccine yet? And he's like, oh, no, I really need to schedule that. And so, you know, I would print out like, oh, hey, they're giving vaccines at this location, or, oh, if you're, you know, and I think, in fact, he ended up coming to one of the events that you guys ran, which was fantastic. One of his concerns, though, also was, you know, his spouse is disabled and she doesn't get around very easily. And, you know, so like he didn't want to get the vaccine until he could go with her so that they could get the vaccine together. So part of this was like he needed to physically get her somewhere, but he also knew she was very hesitant. And so he wanted to like be, you know, there with her getting the vaccine. And so all of these things kind of had to come together in order for him to get vaccinated. And finally, one day he was like, oh gosh, the kids are going to be starting school again. The grandkids are starting school again. I said, I know, it's going to be really important because they can't get vaccinated yet. And, you know, you don't want to give it to them. You don't want them to bring it to you. And that was really kind of the thing that pushed them into going to get the vaccine. So I just say that because that's one story that I've had in my own experience in this COVID vaccine journey that just sticks out in my mind. And finally, balancing the positive and negative emotions. I think you can't make this be all about, oh, you know, COVID and, you know, you're going to be hospitalized or you could die or this, you know, the fear is motivating for some people, and a certain amount of that is good. But I think you also want to balance it with optimism of, you know, this pandemic will end, and the more people that get vaccinated, the better off we're going to be. And, you know, just kind of balancing those two very powerful emotions can be really eye-opening. So that is all I have. Thank you again. And I'm going to stop the screen share. And if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer.
Dr. Connolly, I believe we have some space for some questions at the end. So they can submit them in the chat, and Sarah will be moderating that.
Perfect.
And I want to thank you, Dr. Connolly. That was an absolutely amazing presentation. I feel like it's so applicable both to COVID vaccine and really the difficult conversations we have to have as healthcare providers in general. And I really think it undercuts working with people to achieve those results, as opposed to focusing on the friction that could come out of those conversations. So thank you, I appreciate it. So we're actually going to wrap up today with the vaccine hesitancy toolkit that has been mentioned a few times already. So I believe Margaret has just sent that into the chat. And I would encourage you all to take a quick look at it. So this document was produced, it was a collaboration between the Interdisciplinary Student Council, OU Health, the Staff Senate, and just a host of other fantastic faculty, clinicians, and students that work together to compile this. And I felt privileged to be a part of this endeavor. And so after we reviewed best practices, CDC documents, state resources, we compiled this toolkit to help individuals have those difficult conversations. So just a couple of suggestions in terms of actually implementing this toolkit. So we would definitely recommend you download a copy and review it ahead of time to have a deeper understanding of those talking points. And then we would also encourage you to share this document with those individuals or groups that you are having these difficult conversations with, so they have a frame of reference for that as well. And then feel free to make this available to patients, students, colleagues, whoever you interact with that is involved in the vaccine in some way, or honestly, anyone at this point. COVID has unfortunately involved us all. We do have permission to include the hyperlink in your email signature as well. So as you're sending out those emails, that resource is clear and plain. So now that we've discussed the toolkit a little bit, and I hope you've all had the chance to look for it, we are wrapping up today's session, but we do have some time for questions. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the chat or feel free to unmute. And these questions don't have to be for me. They can be for any of the panelists. They can be for Dr. Connolly. Please feel free to use this time to clarify anything you may have.
Oh, so someone did ask a question in the chat. They asked, what about when they say their family doctor gave them information and it was inaccurate?
So I'll just jump in here. Is the question that the family doctor, the person is telling you they gave them inaccurate information, or they're telling you what the doctor said and you recognize that it's inaccurate?
The latter, that the information they say they were given from their local provider was inaccurate.
I think that's a great question. And I'm just going to jump in with my thought here, and then other people can jump in too. I think that definitely happens. And I had a discussion earlier today about distrust of science. And I mean, all of us, I know, have had conversations about that. Distrust of science. And one of the things that the person I was talking to said that she feels like people, say is that things change. One day aspirin's good for you, the next day it's not, and so I think that could be an approach that you could take in a situation like that. So what we don't want to do is, again, they may trust this person a lot. So we don't want to say, well, that's an idiotic thing for them to tell you, good grief. But what we could say is, it's really challenging to sort through all of the information that people have about this today. Let me tell you what I have seen the literature say about this. The best evidence that I have seen from my practice and from my reading indicates this. And so I think just giving them that other perspective without disrupting their trust or respect of the other person, because it does change. I mean, that is what we know about science, that we learn more, we adjust. It's a very iterative process. And so I think helping people accept that is good for us to do. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Dr. Kraft.
So I do see that we are approaching the 1 o'clock hour. In the chat, you will shortly see a link to the evaluation. We ask that you please take 2 or 3 minutes to complete the evaluation. It's going to be very helpful as we return data to the CDC of how many people participated today. And it looks like that was dropped in the chat, so thank you. And I just want to take this time to say that our November Grand Rounds will be held on November 18th over Zoom and will feature content related to the Unity Series student-led programming, such as the Reproductive Health Symposium. We're really excited about that coming up. So please join me in thanking our guests for their time and education on this topic. As we conclude, we thank you for your time and your attention. The recording of today's Grand Rounds will be made available on the IPE website at ipe.ouhsc.edu. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event. Have a great day.